Causes and effects of World War II. Causes of World War II. In 1935, Hitler began to defy the Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I. He announced that Germany would build a new air force and begin a military draft to greatly expand its army actions in direct violation of the treaty. Rather than enforce the treaty by going to war, however, European leaders tried to negotiate with Hitler. Europe's leaders had several reasons for believing or wanting to believe that a deal could be reached with Hitler to avoid war. First, they wanted to avoid a repeat of World War I. Second, some thought most of Hitler's demands were reasonable, including his demand that all German-speaking regions be united. Third, many people assumed that the Nazis would want peace once they gained more territory. In late 1937, Hitler again called for the unification of all German-speaking people, including those in Austria and Czechoslovakia. He believed that Germany could expand its territory only by force. In February 1938, Hitler threatened to invade German-speaking Austria unless Austrian Nazis were given important government posts. Austria's chancellor gave in to this demand, but then tried to put the matter of unification with Germany to a democratic vote. Fearing the outcome, Hitler sent troops to Austria in March and announced the Anschluss, or unification, of Austria and Germany. Hitler next announced German claims to the Sudetenland, an area of Czechoslovakia with a large German-speaking population. The Czechs strongly resisted Germany's demands. France threatened to fight if Germany attacked Czechoslovakia, and the Soviet Union also promised aid. Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain pledged Britain's support to France, its ally. Representatives of Britain, France, Italy, and Germany met in Munich, Germany, to decide Czechoslovakia's fate. At the Munich conference on September 29, 1938, Britain and France agreed to Hitler's demands, a policy that came to be known as appeasement. In other words, they made concessions and believed that if they gave Hitler what he wanted, they could avoid war. Czechoslovakia had to give up the Sudetenland or fight Germany on its own. When Chamberlain returned home, he stated, "My good friends, for the second time in our history, a British Prime Minister has returned from Germany bringing peace with honor. I believe it is peace for our time. Go home and get a nice, quiet sleep." Appeasement, however, failed to preserve the fragile peace. In March 1939, Germany sent troops to Czechoslovakia and divided the country. Slovakia became independent in name, but it was actually under German control. The Czech lands became a German protectorate. A month after the Munich conference, Hitler demanded the city of Danzig be returned to German control. Danzig was more than 90% German, and it had been part of Poland since World War I. Hitler also requested a highway and railroad across the Polish corridor, which had been carved out after World War I to give Poland access to the sea. Hitler's new demands convinced Britain and France that war was inevitable. On March 31, 1939, Britain announced that if Poland went to war to defend its territory, Britain and France would come to its aid. This declaration encouraged Poland to refuse Hitler's demands. In May 1939, Hitler ordered the German army to prepare to invade Poland. He also ordered his foreign minister to begin negotiations with the Soviet Union. If Germany was going to fight Britain and France, Hitler did not want to have to fight the Soviets too. World War II was the biggest and deadliest war in history, involving more than 30 countries. Sparked by the 1939 Nazi invasion of Poland, the war dragged on for 6 years until the Allies defeated the Axis powers of Nazi Germany, Japan, and Italy in 1945. The devastation of the Great War had destabilized Europe in many respects. World War II grew out of issues left unresolved in Germany and lingering resentment over harsh terms imposed by the Versailles Treaty, fueled by the rise to power of Adolf Hitler and National Socialist German Workers' Party, abbreviated as NSDAP in German, and the Nazi Party. After becoming Chancellor of Germany in 1933, Hitler was obsessed with the idea of the superiority of the pure German race, which he called Aryan. Hitler believed that war was the only way to gain the necessary Lebensraum, or living space, for the German race to expand. In the mid-1930s, he secretly began the rearmament of Germany, a violation of the Versailles Treaty after signing alliance with Italy and Japan against the Soviet Union. Hitler sent troops to occupy Austria in 1938, and the following year annexed Czechoslovakia. Hitler's open aggression went unchecked as the United States and Soviet Union were concentrated on internal politics at the time, and neither France nor Britain were eager for confrontation. Effects of World War II. The war changed American society dramatically. America benefited from the war unlike Europe and Asia. The Great Depression ended due to the war, and 19 million job opportunities were created. This led to the doubling of household incomes. However, all these benefits came with much trouble. Housing conditions were terrible, and there was much more pressure and prejudice, which led to strikes, race riots, and rose juvenile delinquency. Workers earned more money but had to work more hours. Taxes were raised and goods were rationed. Because of the war, many American defense factories hired women and minorities due to the lack of white men. Eventually, this led to 2.5 million women working in shipyards, aircraft factories, and other manufacturing plants. At the end of the war, the number of working women went from 12.9 million to 18.8 million. However, many women were laid off after the war, but their success permanently changed the way Americans saw women in workplaces. The years 1939 to 1945 were a transformative period in global history. World War II left major powers like Britain, France, Germany, Japan, and the Soviet Union in ruins. Cities were destroyed, economies were shattered, and large portions of these countries were occupied by foreign armies. The human cost was staggering, with an estimated 25 million people losing their jobs in the conflict. The Holocaust, a systematic genocide perpetrated by Nazi Germany, resulted in the murder of approximately 2/3 of European Jews, fueling international support for the establishment of a Jewish state Israel. The war marked the end of Japan's imperial ambitions, and European colonial empires began to crumble. Over the following decades, many former colonies in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East gained their independence, leading to the emergence of new nations and reshaping the geopolitical landscape. In contrast, the United States emerged from the war relatively unscathed. Its economy, bolstered by wartime production, became the world's dominant economic powerhouse. By the mid-1940s, the U.S. was producing over 35% of the world's GDP. With the vast military force and control over the world's first nuclear weapons, the United States established itself as a superpower, wielding unprecedented influence on the global stage. The Soviet Union, despite suffering immense losses during Germany's invasion, managed to rebuild and strengthen its military and industrial capabilities. Soviet troops occupied Eastern Europe, and communism, as an ideological alternative to capitalism, posed a significant challenge to American ideals of democracy, free enterprise, and limited government. The divisions and tensions among former wartime allies soon gave rise to the Cold War, a period characterized by geopolitical rivalry, espionage, and proxy wars between the United States and its allies, collectively known as the Western Bloc, and the Soviet Union and its allies, the Eastern Bloc. This ideological and geopolitical struggle dominated international relations for decades and had a profound impact on global politics, economics, and culture.